For this Photoshop tutorial, we'll be taking 4 images of clouds and compiling them together in a collage. So first off, let's go to Photoshop. I'm going to create a new file, so click Create New, and here are some templates that Photoshop offers. These are various sizes and resolutions, and you can also go up to categories like photo and print, and this will have standards like A4. We're going to create our own. Change the name to Cloud Collage, and let's change our measurements to be pixels. Let's change the width to be 2000, and change the height to be 2000. The resolution, we want this to be high, so we'll keep this at 300. If yours isn't at 300, change it to 300. That looks good. We can click the Create button. So here's our canvas here. This is where we'll be placing all the cloud images. You'll notice that we have a percentage up here. Mine is set at 33.3%. This reflects the size of your canvas on your screen. Different screens may have different percentages. To zoom up, you can go Command and plus and minus on Mac, or Control plus and minus on PC. You can also hold the Alt key and scroll with your mouse wheel. So if we zoom up to 100%, this shows us how big the image actually is. But of course, we want this to be small enough on our screen so we can see all of the image, so we'll keep it at about 33%. So let's open up our first cloud image. I'll hide Photoshop, go to my folder, and then right-click on the first cloud image and click Open with Photoshop. And there's our file. You'll notice when you open up multiple files, you get different tabs on the top here. You can hit these tabs at any time to navigate between your files, and this is how you can have multiple files open up in Photoshop. I'm looking to copy this cloud image and put it on my original canvas. But I don't want the whole image, I'd like it to be a square shape. So I'm going to use a tool called the Marquee tool. And the Marquee tool's shortcut is M. If you click the Marquee tool, you'll notice that your mouse turns into a crosshair. If I click and hold and then drag out, you'll notice that I create this bounding box. This bounding box is called a selection. And what that means is if you choose a tool, let's say I choose my brush, and if I draw within the selection, you'll notice that the drawing only appears within the bounding box. So this is a way that you can tell Photoshop, I'd like you to focus on just what's in this bounding box. If you've made a selection and you want to deselect it, make sure you're using the Marquee tool. You can move your mouse outside of the box and you'll notice that it turns into the crosshairs again. And you can tap once and it will deselect. So if I draw another box, if I tap once outside, it deselects. Another way to deselect is to go up to your top menu and click Select, Deselect. That's very helpful because if you have a very tiny selection, you may not know where it is, and you'll try and do some work in Photoshop and have some errors where your work isn't actually being recognized. That's because you have a very small selection. So if you're ever not sure, use Select, Deselect, and that will deselect any selection in your file. And now I'm going to draw my shape. I'd like this to be a square, so to draw a square, hold down the Shift key, and you'll notice that it changes to be proportionate. Let's make my square there. Now it doesn't need to be perfectly where you'd like it, because you'll notice when I move the Marquee tool and my mouse into the middle of the selection, my cursor changes to a white arrow with a white box. This means you're able to click and drag and move your selection around. So I'm going to choose a spot that I like, probably about half-half cloud and sky. About there looks good. Now we'll go up to Edit and Copy. Now click back on the original canvas, and this time go Edit, Paste. And you'll notice that our cloud has appeared, and we have a new layer over here on the right. So you'll notice that our file is really big. So we're going to use a tool called Free Transform to shrink this down. First, let's give us some space in Photoshop. Let's zoom out. I'm going to use Command minus on Mac. Let's double click on layer 1, and I'll call this Cloud 1. With this layer selected, click Edit, Free Transform. And you'll notice now that we get this white box outline with smaller clear boxes. These are the handles. If I click and drag anywhere in this space, I can move my cloud image, but I'd like to shrink it down. So to shrink, click and hold on one of the corners, And again, we're wanting to hold Shift as we do this. If you hold Shift, you can shrink your cloud image down. I'm going to zoom in using Control plus or Command plus. That's good for now. Let's hit the tick button to accept these changes. Using my Move tool and making sure my Cloud 1 layer is selected, I'm now able to move this cloud image around on my canvas. So let's close this original cloud file. Photoshop will ask you to save it because you've made changes. Click Don't Save. And let's open the next cloud image. Right-click again and open with Photoshop. Again, let's repeat using the Marquee tool. I'll hold Shift and drag a box and release. Now I can click and hold in the middle and choose a spot that I like. I'll choose here. Select Edit, Copy, and go back to your original file and choose Edit, Paste. Once again, we have a new layer. Let's double click and call this Cloud 2. And I'd like to transform this down. So choose Edit, Free Transform. And I'll go to the top right here, and holding Shift, I'll click and drag. And you'll notice that my cloud is now almost out of the canvas completely. Just click and hold and drag it back up into your canvas. When you're happy with that, hit the tick button. So we'll repeat this for the two other cloud images. We'll grab our third cloud image, right-click, open with Photoshop. Using my Marquee tool, I'll hold Shift, drag a box, release, and then click and drag in the middle to choose an area I like. Select Edit, Copy. Go back to my original file, choose Edit, Paste. And I'll double click on the layer to change it to be Cloud 3. And I recommend changing the names of your layers. This will help you keep track when you have multiple layers in your Photoshop file. Edit, Free Transform. And again, grab one of the corners and hold down the Shift key and drag down. Then release and then reposition. We'll hit the tick to accept. We'll close that file. And now for our fourth cloud image, we'll right-click, open with Photoshop. Using the Marquee tool, I'll hold Shift, drag a box. Now I don't want any of this grass in here, so I'm going to make it a little bit smaller, and then click and drag to choose a spot that I like. I might go here. Edit, Copy, and go back to our original file, Edit, Paste. And you can see that this image is a little bit smaller, so we don't need to free transform it. Now that we've got a bunch of layers, let's now save our file. Click File, Save As. And I'm going to call this Cloud Collage. Make sure you're selecting the Photoshop. Make sure you've chosen the Photoshop file format, and make sure that the Layers tick box is ticked. Click Save, and our Photoshop file is saved. Now what I'd like to do is split up this canvas into 4 quadrants, and an easy way to do that is to use rulers. To activate your rulers, click up on the top menu and click View, and select Rulers, or you can also hit Command R or Control R on PC. You'll notice now on the top we have a horizontal ruler, and on the left side we have a vertical ruler. Using your Move tool, if you click and hold within this ruler and drag down, you'll notice that you get a ruler line. If you release, you'll see that we have this blue ruler line. If at any point you want to move this ruler line, using your Move tool, move your cursor over it and it will turn into a different cursor variant. Click and drag, you'll notice that Photoshop snaps at the halfway point. Release at the halfway point, and now we have our canvas split into 2. To bring a vertical ruler line, go to your left ruler, click and hold, and drag over, and we're going to release this right in the middle where it snaps, about there. So now we have 4 quadrants. Now these rulers, they're not going to be in the actual final Photoshop file, so if you printed this, you wouldn't see them. Let's name our final 4th layer to be Cloud 4. And now I'd like to clear the canvas a little bit so I can have more room to see what I'm working with. Let's click the eye icon on cloud 4, 3, and 2. That hides the layers. They're still there in our file. They're just invisible for now. So now we can work on cloud 1. To work on cloud 1, click on cloud 1 layer. Now what I'm going to do is shrink this down and make it fit within this quadrant. I'll use Edit, Free Transform, and I can hold Shift, grab one of the corners, and move it down. And you'll notice that sometimes Photoshop doesn't snap to the guidelines if you're holding Shift. So what I recommend, make your image just a little bit bigger than the quadrant, hit the tick button, and now using your Move tool, now when you move your cloud around, it will snap to those ruler lines. And you'll notice that the ruler lines turn pink when there's a snap. Let's turn on cloud 2 and repeat. Select cloud 2's layer, choose Edit, Free Transform, hold Shift and shrink down your cloud. Now let's put this up to the top right. Hold Shift to stretch it back out, and I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger than the guidelines. I'll hit the tick to accept, and now using my Move tool, I'll move these clouds and make sure that they snap to those guidelines. Let's turn on cloud 3 and select the layer. We'll choose Edit, Free Transform again, and I'll hold Shift and shrink down. I'll make it a little bit bigger than the quadrant and hit the tick button. And now using my Move tool, I'll make sure it snaps to those guides. I'll repeat this with cloud 4. Edit, Free Transform. Make it just a little bit bigger and hit the tick button. And now position it so it snaps. So there, our Photoshop file is broken up into 4 quadrants, and the clouds are all spaced out. I don't like where this one is on the bottom left, so I'm going to select that layer, move it up to the top right, and then I'll choose cloud 2 and move that down to the bottom left. To remove your rulers, click and drag the horizontal one and release it back up in the ruler. Click your vertical one and drag it over to the left of the rulers. I clear them off so it makes my canvas a little bit easier to see what I'm working with, but you can keep them there. They won't be in the final Photoshop file. Let's zoom in a little bit. So now let's add some text onto our cloud background. The text tool is T for a keyboard shortcut, and if you click once, you'll notice that your cursor turns into this text tool. I'm going to write clouds, and you'll notice that some of my text isn't appearing. That's because you can see over here in the layers stack, the text layer is underneath cloud 3 and 4. Now that's not a problem, we can change that. For now, let's click the tick button. To move layers, click and hold, and then slide your mouse up and down, and where you release is where the layer will be positioned. You'll notice the blue line indicates where the layer will now appear. So let's click and put it up to the top. Now you can see that our cloud text layer is at the very most top of all the layers. To change your font, select your text tool, move your mouse over your text, and you'll notice that it changes from a box text tool to just the text tool itself. Click once, and your cursor will start blinking. Click and drag, or choose Command A or Control A on PC to select all. Let's change our font size to be 72 for now. And you can change your font by going up to the top left and choosing different fonts here. I'll try Gotham Light. If you want to change the color, click the color square up here, and you have the rainbow selection of all of the hues, and then you also have a saturation and grayscale slider. I'm going to make mine white, and you'll notice that the changes happen in this window. Click OK when you're happy, and click the tick when you're happy. To move your text, use the Move tool. Make sure your cloud's text layer is selected, and you can move your text down. Now I'd like my text to be a bit bigger. One way to do this is to choose your text tool, click and highlight all of your text, and change the font size. You see that I can't go bigger than 72 right now. So you can actually type in 120 and hit return, and it will make your text bigger. Another way to change the size of your text is to use the Free Transform. So choose Edit, Free Transform. As always, hold Shift and click and drag. You can make your text smaller, bigger, you can even reposition it. So I'll make mine about there. That looks good. And I'll hit tick. Using my move tool, I'll move this a little bit to the left, so it's about in the center. So I want to move my clouds text to be perfectly centered, so instead of using my move tool and my mouse, what you can use is your arrow keys. And you can tap them to move it pixel by pixel, left and right, up and down. About there looks good. So let's save our file. File save, and that saved the Photoshop file with all of the layers embedded. Now let's go to save this as a JPEG. File, export, export as, and you have this pop-up window. And you'll notice that our clouds image fits on the screen, but you'll notice that it's also at 33%. So this is 1/3 of its actual size. If you click the plus sign, you get to 100%, you can see that it's actually a very big image. Now, if you were printing this image, I would recommend saving it at this size. But since we're not printing this, and say we're going to put this on a website, make the percentage the size that you'd like it to be on the website. Say 33% is the size that I'd like. Go over to the right here, and change the scale from 100% to be 33. Then if you hit return, it adjusts the size, and you'll notice that it's really small, but don't worry, that's because it's still at 33% zoom. So zoom up to 100%, and this is the size that it will be when you save the JPEG. Go up to the top here to Format, and change PNG, and select JPEG. And what's happening on the left column is it's giving you a preview. It'll be a JPEG, 660 by 660, and it'll be 342 kilobytes. So this is at 100% quality. We don't need our file to be a full 100%. Let's make it about 70%. That takes our file size down to 113 kilobytes. The image still looks really good, and when we're ready, we'll hit Export All. I'm going to call this Cloud Collage Edit, and save this into the same folder. Click Save, and we're back to our Photoshop file. So I'll minimize Photoshop, and now you can see that we have our Cloud Collage PSD file. So this is the file. If we open it again in Photoshop, it will have all of the layers. And then we have Cloud Collage Edit, the JPEG. So this file is a JPEG, and it doesn't have any layers. But it's compressed and would look good if you wanted to put it on a website. So that's how you can combine 4 separate images and some text to create a simple photo collage in Photoshop.